Hey, it's me, your Uncle Cooper. Sorry to interrupt your music. I do love music, especially when it's set at a reasonable volume. You know, music is really only as good as your speakers. The same is true for minivans. A minivan is only as good as the tires it sits on. And the button on the screen there, it agrees with me. If you click on it, it'll bring you to all the Cooper minivan tires that'll make your minivan a really good minivan. Go with the Coopers! Cooper!
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Hope things are well with you wherever you are today. Another day closer to college football. And it's one of those things, too, like when we're winning, it seems like it takes forever for the weekend to get here. Like we're so eager to play again. We're going to break down Kentucky today. Very extensive look at the Wildcats. We'll look at the series history. We'll look at what the Wildcats have done to date, what to expect. I have said for some time this is not a good matchup for Kentucky. It's not. And when we get into this today, I think you're going to agree Mississippi State should be the favorite in this game. They are the favorite. With or without Will Levis as a quarterback, Mississippi State should win this game. That said, there's a reason we play them. There are a lot of people that thought, you know what? A&M had no shot against Alabama, and it goes down to the final play of the game. So there's a reason we play. And you know this. I'm not insulting your intelligence, but I have said from the outset that Mississippi State should beat Kentucky. I will continue to say that. There are some others now that have come around to my line of thinking. I think a lot of people get caught up with mock drafts early on and like, oh, well, Will Levis is projected to be number one quarterback taken in the draft, and he may be. I think that's a mistake. I don't think that his production matches the reported potential that's out there. I just don't. And I think you've got a guy that's got a bad wheel. He did practice this week. He has a severe case of turf toe. A lot of people say, well, Steve, what is turf toe? Well, basically it's a hyperextension of the big toe. Very painful. Sometimes there are varying grades of that. It is an injury that lingers because it's difficult to heal without rest. And playing college football, not a lot of rest. He did rest last week. He suffered the injury against Ole Miss. Of course, Kentucky lost last week and lost to Ole Miss. Probably the only real difficult game I would say that Ole Miss has played, and they won it. They've had a very manageable schedule, but that was a big one. Kentucky comes in highly rated, and highly regarded. I have not been sold on Kentucky the entire year. I'm not sold on Ole Miss either. But playing that game in Oxford, Ole Miss should have won the game. They did. And Kentucky had their opportunities, as you guys know. They had some special teams miscues. We think it only happens to us, but it happens to other people too. But this Kentucky team, I think, has been, we talk about heavy as the head that wears the crown. I'm not ready to crown them or any respect, but I think the weight of the expectations on this team has proven to be very difficult for them to handle. But also, too, they were overhyped. They were overrated. They were overranked. And I think now what you're seeing is the expectations are being somewhat tempered because Kentucky is just an average team. I think I picked them 8-4. I think that's what I did, picked them 8-4. And I think they're staring 7-5 right in the face because I expected them to beat South Carolina. And congratulations to Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. It's a good win. It is. Anytime you go on the road in this conference and you win a game, it's a big deal. And South Carolina, as we discussed on Monday, never really felt like that they were threatened in the second half of that ball game. So we're going to break down Kentucky. Done a lot of research. I think you're going to like what I have to say today. Not that you don't every day, but I think you're going to enjoy kind of getting inside Kentucky. My honest opinion is I think this game is going to go very similarly as the last two did. Wood State getting a lead and then kind of taking over there in the second half and getting some separation between them and their opponents. But, again, we'll break it all down. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company. I have always loved Bulldog Burger Company. It was love at first bite for me. The very first time I went in there, it was a great atmosphere. I had the Bulldog. I said, you know what? I could do this again. Eventually, I had every burger on the menu. We had the Bulldog Burger Challenge, and my friend Tom Minyard, may rest in peace, he also completed the Bulldog Burger Challenge. And appreciate him doing so. Tom, a great man, a great Bulldog. I miss him very much so. But Bulldog Burger Company is a great place to go eat, whether it be a night out with family or night out with friends. They've got an atmosphere and a menu that I think will kind of suit your fancy there. You can have an adult beverage, or perhaps you just want to have a night out with family and have a good family night. They can accommodate whatever your wishes are. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Start Vegas, that brand new patio area. A lot of people are enjoying that. Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, and then Lake Harper Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Be sure and go check them out today. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. We're trying to make America as beautiful as we can be, and the spring rolls will make you and everybody around you better looking. We all need more of that. I love that Shipway's Donut Spread Pudding, too. Maybe you get that. Maybe take it home. Have it for breakfast, whatever. Or get that chocolate shake to go. A lot of options for you. The great restaurant quality hamburger always available at Bulldog Burger Company. But if you know what? If you don't want to eat quite as heavy, have that BLT salad. I love it. I would suggest to you it's one of the best salads I've ever eaten. The portions are so substantial. I've never finished it. And I'm 6'2", 215 pounds. So if I can't finish it, chances are you can't either. It could be lunch and dinner for you. I like it grilled. You may like it fried. Be sure and check it out today. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right. Let's talk about the history of the Bulldogs and the Wildcats. This is something, this is an old series, but we didn't play regularly, of course, until the SEC expanded back in 92, I guess it was. But State leads the overall series 25-24. Maybe you didn't know that. But before Dan Mullen got here, Kentucky was certainly the beneficiary of a series that didn't favor the Bulldogs. But it dates back to 1914. And of course, that's been a few years, right? 1914, Kentucky wins the first matchup. State gets even back in 15. We play them again in 16. So it was like whoever was at home won. We started in Lexington, and so it was back and forth the first few meetings. And then in 1944, we had not played since 1917. We played 14-17 every consecutive year with the home team winning. And then in 44, we meet in Memphis, and we beat them there 26-0. Kentucky's first win in the series in Starkville happened in 1950. They beat us 48-21. The next year in Lexington, they shut us out 27-0. State gets even in 52 with a 27-14 win. In 53, we go, again, it's the home and home thing. All right, we end up going to Lexington 4 consecutive meetings. We went in 53 and lost. We go in 55 and win. We go in 58 and lose. We go in 72 and lose. Interesting, right? It is. The SEC scheduling back then left a lot to be desired. Unless you're Ole Miss, of course, and you absolutely loved it because you never had to play Alabama. All right, 76, Mississippi State gets a win here. We later had to forfeit as part of the Larry Gillard sanctions. In 77, Kentucky beats us, and that began a 4-game winning streak for the Wildcats. State gets even when Jackie Sherrill gets here. We beat them 31-6, and then in 1992, beat them 37-36 in a classic game. If you can find this, at one time it was on YouTube. I remember this game, this 92 game, one of the better games that Mississippi State and Kentucky have ever played. Greg Plump's shining moment in many respects for Mississippi State, very back and forth, and then State wins 37-36, and it felt like late. Even though State had really been in this ball game, we weren't going to be able to pull it off. We do. If you can find it, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. And those of you, I remember I was in an 83 Honda Civic driving to Jackson, in and out of radio service. And like every time we'd catch the radio channel again somewhere else and you hear it through all the static, something good was happening. 93, Kentucky wins, and then State goes on a 2-game winning streak and really got the better of these guys. 94-95, State wins 47-7 and 42-32. In 1996, Kentucky wins 24-21. Then in 97, a great game here. This is a game, too, where State got down early, had a return for the kick. This is a Tim Couch game. And then State comes back to win. Eric Brown with a big game for Mississippi State. One of my memories from this game is Craig East, who was an outstanding wide receiver at Kentucky. Got absolutely shelled. His helmet pops off, and he actually takes a helmet to the head, to the crown of the head. Does not return. That ultimately ended up being a big development because he was, without a doubt, the go-to guy for Kentucky. 1998, State wins the West, but we go on the road and we lose at Kentucky 37-35, a game that we should have won. But give Tim Couch and those guys credit. They come back to win. State didn't lose me that year. That was one of them. After that, State goes on a 3-game winning streak, winning in '99, and that's the Matt Wyatt comeback game, right? He hits Matt Butler on the sidelines. Butler throws the ball out of bounds. They then assess the penalty, and Scott Westerfield takes the field and kicks a game-winning field goal on a Thursday night game for the Bulldogs. In the year of the comeback, State wins 23-22. 2000, we get those guys, and then in 2001, an absolutely miserable season for us. And Tommy Kelly, who had a big game against Kentucky in a 17-14 win. I remember when the game was over, Tommy Kelly and John Blake having to kind of help Tommy from the field. He left everything on the field that day, for sure. There's no doubt about it. All right, 2002. Maybe I've got my years mixed up there with Blake. But either way, 2002, we lose big, 45-24. 03, we lose 42-17. State gets even in 2004. 22-7 winners there, and then Kentucky gets the better of us the next 2 years. You remember in 2006, again, that's a game we should have won. We lose it 34-31 here at our place. All right, 2007, State wins 31-14 in Lexington, and then we lose in 08, 14-13. That's a game, too, if you recall, Adam Carlson missed an extra point and then missed a game-winning field goal. This is one of those games, too, to give you a little backstory here, some insider trading stuff. We lose the ball game. And I think in many respects, losing this game brought an end to the Sylvester Croom era. Former Mississippi State Athletic Director Greg Byrne absolutely tore up about the game. I had some people close to Greg tell me on Sunday, Greg goes into the office and notices, this is before we had the Silk Complex, the football offices were all in Bryan back then, and he was the only one there, walking around moping. And at that point, that's when he began to realize this is not going to work out. We lose that ball game, and rather than, we still had a couple of games left to play to achieve bowl eligibility, and the staff didn't come in that morning on Sunday. And then I'm told that's when really the thought process began in earnest that we needed to make a coaching change, that the result of this game began to lead Greg Byrne down that path. All right, 2009, and let me tell you a little more insider trading here. Dan Mullen, when I first met Dan, one of the things we talked about was this particular series, about how Kentucky was the permanent Eastern opponent and how the series had been so competitive. Before Dan got here, again, Kentucky was the leader in the series. And Dan said, I'm not worried about Kentucky. We'll kill those guys. And he reeled off, 8 straight? 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And that's really the difference in the series. That's when State got caught up with Kentucky. And then we lose in 16, and it took a case of Sermonitis for us to lose that game. Peter Sermon was not ready to be a defensive coordinator, and this game is a very good example of that. Nick Fitzgerald leads us down after throwing a pick six. Nick brings us all the way back and hits Fred Ross for what should have been the game-winning touchdown. At this point, we thought we got it. It's all good. And then for some reason, we played prevent defense, allowed Kentucky to go down the field and kick a game-winning field goal, 40-38. Neil Price, now the voice of the Bulldogs, tells me, he was in Kentucky then, that he was so excited because they finally had beat Mississippi State that he slapped a wall and the ring on his hand left an indentation in the sheetrock. All right, 2017, State gets back. 45-7 winners, an absolute bloodletting at Davis Wade Stadium. 2018, probably one of the more disappointing losses that we've had against Kentucky, at least in recent memory. That was a great defense for us. One of the worst officiated games that I have ever seen. And I was there on the sidelines. Now, State also played very undisciplined, and Kentucky, I thought, did a great job defensively against us. But, people forget when you look at that ball game, Brian Cole picked off a pass on the Kentucky side of the field that gave us a chance to get even. I believe it was a 14-7 game in the fourth quarter. We ultimately lose 28-7. Benny Snell with a couple big runs late to kind of put us away. But we were just so bad offensively. And I remember taking phone calls, from donors and other guys in the media on their way back from Lexington. about how disappointing it was and said, you know what, I don't know if this thing with Moorhead's going to work out. I'm like, well, we'll see. Let's just give the guy time. But that was one where State absolutely imploded. That 2018 defense was outstanding. We really had some difficulties that night. Personal fouls, unsportsmanlike conduct. We were called for a PI that didn't happen. There were other times that we got tackled in the pass pattern. We didn't get the benefit of a flag. It was a horrific game. State didn't play well. It wasn't officiated well. And they win 28-7. 19 to come up here, we get them 28-13. Garrett Schrader late in that ball game. State had dominated this game, and Schrader had a pick and I guess a fumble into the pile. State should have been well ahead in this ball game. And then Garrett Schrader late makes a big run to put the game away. We needed somebody to make a play because Kentucky had all the momentum. And Schrader makes the play. And that's when there was something kind of special about this guy. He was still young, still a bit immature, but the guy was a gamer. And then Mike Leach goes up to Lexington in 2020, our last trip up there. And for the only time in his career, does not post an offensive point on the board. We lose 24-2 through 6 interceptions. And I remember listening to postgame radio, and they were talking about how well the defense played. You know what? They didn't allow a point. And so it's kind of hard to argue against that. But this was really a situation where KJ Costello just simply melted down. I think after what happened at Arkansas, it's like, okay, let's go up here and get some things done. State, defensively, we only allowed 157 yards in the game. And I think like 70 of that was on one play. The defense played outstanding, despite the fact that they were given a short end of the field over and over and over. KJ had a pick six. He had another one that was returned inside the 5 and set up a touchdown. But give Kentucky credit. They made the plays to win the game. Mississippi State played terribly. And if you don't think that's not a motivating factor as we get ready to pack the bus this week, you're kidding yourself. Of course, last year, State wins 31-17 in the ball game. And Kentucky gets out to the early lead here, and then State dominates the rest of the way. That's kind of how it was. We didn't panic if we got down 2 scores. But if you go back and look at that game and you really think about that game last year, it was kind of fluky, to be honest with you. What I mean by that is like Kentucky didn't play well. And you look up and say, well, State won by a couple touchdowns. The score was not truly indicative of how well State played over the course of those last 3 quarters. State really dominated this game in many respects. Is coffee part of your morning routine? It is for me. And I found the secret, guys. It's called the good stuff. Make it part of your normal coffee routine. I don't know that I could make it through the morning without a good cup of joe. The good stuff makes it taste even better, and I've noticed significant improvements in how I feel each and every day. I don't have those up and down roller coaster type moments. I've had more energy without the typical crash. I'm more focused, and I've even noticed my skin and hair looking better. People have even commented, Steve, you're looking younger. Perhaps the good stuff is part of that transformation. Formulated by pro golfer Phil Mickelson and elite performance coach Dave Phillips, the good stuff will stimulate your metabolism, increase focus, support skin and joint health, and reduces the coffee jitters. For a limited time, Boneyard listeners can get 20% off, free shipping, and a free starter kit worth over $30 on their first purchase of the good stuff. Simply go to ForWellness, that's F-O-R, wellness.com/Boneyard to save on your first purchase. There's nothing like adding something new and getting to save some money in the process. So 20% off your first order, plus free shipping and a free starter kit worth over $30 for a limited time when you visit forwellness.com/Boneyard. Again, that's FORWELLNESS.com/Boneyard. This is for wellness. Best offer right now, so don't wait. Order today. They're so sure you'll see the benefits of adding the good stuff to your coffee. They even back every purchase with a 60-day money-back guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied, you can get a full refund. Again, that's forwellness.com/Boneyard.
At Kroger, no matter where you order free pickup, you get the same great deals as you'd get in-store. So you can save when you order during band practice, or at the dog park, or wherever. Start your cart with the Kroger app and save from wherever today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. $35 order minimum. Restrictions may apply. Subject to availability.
And now, shop what you love and save $2 on each participating item when you buy 3 or more with your card. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Let's take a quick look back at that before we kind of get into what the Wildcats have looked like this year. So, of course, State enters that ball game, with a 2-2 record. Excuse me. That's not correct. Well, we beat Vanderbilt. Yeah, I saw that the blue flash there on the schedule. I apologize. Don't say mean things about me on Twitter. I'm a delicate flower. We entered the game with a 4-3 record. Kentucky was 5-2 coming in. But when you go back and look at this, Kentucky gets up 7-0 there in the first quarter. And it was a special teams miscue, which was really, that was the story of the year in many respects last year. We were getting better on defense. We were getting better on offense. Took a huge step back in special teams last year. And this was part of it. It's like we're doing a good job here. We go out there. We put together a good defensive stop. Sean Preston with a pick of Will Levis on Kentucky's first drive. And we go down and we're doing pretty good here. And then Tucker Day hits a line drive punt that Josh Ali runs 74 yards. Should have made a play there. We didn't. But that's really all Kentucky could do. We also missed a field goal in that first quarter, too. But Kentucky not really able to do much in this first quarter other than a punt. But you know what? Those count. Eventually, Kentucky gets up 10-0 and make a field goal. And I think at this point we thought, okay, it's time to go. And from here, Mississippi State really just kind of took Kentucky behind the woodshed. We go down there and score a touchdown, makes it a 10-7 game. We get a three and out, and we get a pretty good punt return from Jaden Wiley. Sets up the Bulldogs again for another touchdown. Now it's 14-10. And State had all the juice here. Will Levis picked off again. Emmanuel Forbes picked. This is deep in Mississippi State territory. And that was really a game-changing play because if Kentucky had a chance to kind of get into the half with a lead, maybe they feel a little bit better about things. But instead, Mississippi State comes out. We get the drive, the opening drive of the half, and drive down the field and kick field goal. Kick field goal, makes it 17-10. We actually had a touchdown that was called back on a holding call and ultimately had to kick field goal here. But 17-10 ball game. Again, we were down 10-0. We get the ball back. Chris Rodriguez fumbles the football after a two-play drive. We take over at the Kentucky 22, go right in and score. Now it's a 24-10 ball game. And I think at this point, every one of you felt, okay, hey, Steve, we're in good shape. Well, the very next play, Will Levis threw another pick. It was batted up in the air, and Cameron Young picks it off. And then State goes down and scores again to 31-10. So State scores 31 unanswered in this game. And at this point, heading to the fourth quarter, the thing was over. I mean, it was absolutely over. Kentucky scores in the first drive of the fourth quarter. And then at this point, we kind of salt this game away and win. And I don't think there was any question coming off the field that night who was a better team. So that's how last year went down. And, we talk about Will Levis having, the house of horrors. A lot of that's Zach Arnett. The majority of it is Zach Arnett. Look at individual numbers here. Will Levis 17-28 for 150 yards and 3 interceptions. Just the one touchdown. And the touchdown was of not meaningful at all. If that, again, it's a 3-score game when that happens. State went down a little bit. Will Rogers threw for 344 yards and a touchdown. Sacked twice. We're going to get to those sacks a little bit later. But State ran for a net of 94 yards in the ball game. And those sacks really were the only thing that kept us over less than 100 yards. But Jaden Wiley with a nice game. Rara Thomas had the big touchdown. But again, I don't think there's any question who the better team was in that ball game. All right, let's look at Kentucky this year. Again, a lot of hype. I don't know who Mitch Barnhart has hired to be their PR person, but they're getting their money's worth from that person. They convinced an awful lot of people that Kentucky could potentially win the East this year. I don't know how, but they did. All right, looking here. Looking at the schedule for this year for Kentucky. 4-2 on the year. They open up with a 37-13 win over Miami of Ohio. Kentucky was ranked 20th at the time. They didn't move up after the W. They go to Gainesville, though, and I don't care what kind of team Florida has. Anytime you go in the swamp and come out with a W, it's a big deal. It is. And for years and years and years, Florida dominated the series with Kentucky. And now all of a sudden, Stoops has kind of got Kentucky holding their own here. It's one thing to win in Lexington, but when you go into the Swamp and do it, it's a big deal. And again, I don't care who you are or where you're from. You win in the Swamp, it's a big win. It is. It may not be a huge win nationally, but it's big for your program. At the time, Florida was ranked 12th in the country, fresh off of an upset of Utah in week 1. And I was kind of convinced, Billy was going to be okay. And I still think they will be. But Kentucky goes down there and hits a very confident Florida team square in the mouth and win 26-16. The next week, they struggle with Youngstown State a little bit, but they win the game 31-0. Of course, Youngstown never really threatened, but the Kentucky offense was just kind of okay. The next week, they really struggle with Northern Illinois. They win the game 31-23, but you can kind of see Northern Illinois gave Vanderbilt some trouble too, and you said, Steve, it's Vandy. Northern Illinois should not be able to compete regularly against SEC athletes, and they did it twice this year. Maybe that's an up-and-coming coach right there that somebody in the Big Ten should consider. And, of course, they lose to Ole Miss 22-19, lose last week 24-14. So kind of trending in the wrong direction the last 3 weeks. Since reaching the top 10, it's just like it's been a different deal. And, of course, they play us, and then they go to Knoxville, and then they're at Missouri. And based on how Missouri's played as of late, I don't think anybody can just consider that to be a W if you're Kentucky, if you're scuffling a little bit. Because, listen, there's a real possibility that Kentucky is going to enter that ball game with Missouri on a 4-game losing streak. And then they get right against Vanderbilt and they play Georgia. But you start looking at the numbers here. I mean, Louisville's not good. It's a rivalry game, but Louisville's not good. But you look at your 4-2 at the halfway mark. You're going to lose to Mississippi State. You're going to lose to Tennessee. So all of a sudden you're 4-4, and then the pitchforks will be out. Not that Stoops in any way is any jeopardy. But be like, I don't understand. We were top 10. We were expected to win the East, and now we're 4-4 with 4 games left to play. And you managed to win, 2 or 3 down the stretch here. You end up being a 7-5 team. Again, I think they're a game behind schedule because of that South Carolina loss. But it's all very interesting to me how it all unfolds. There's so many people out there that tell, this is the year. Kentucky's going to beat Georgia. South Carolina's going to beat Georgia. Yeah, Kirby, welcome to what Nick Saban goes through a lot, right? All the dynasty's over. This is the year. But, I mean, how did anybody look at this team and say, hey, these guys are going to win the East? No, they're not. You don't get better by losing players. Oh, well, they've got the number 1 quarterback in the draft, and I think that's very sketchy. And so let's take some time and kind of look at that too, before we kind of move on to today's top 10 list. But let's look at these Kentucky numbers. I think it's important. Let's not talk about potential. Let's talk about production. All right, Will Levis, of course, has played in 5 games. He's 97 of 141 with 4 interceptions and 12 touchdowns, averaging 281 yards a game through the air. Kaya Sharon started last week. He's played a couple of games, 15 of 27, 1 interception. I do expect Will Levis to play. Does he finish the game? I don't know. Don't know about that. But I do expect him to play. And, again, he was in practice earlier this week. And I think a lot of people were kind of projecting he wasn't going to play because of what the line was doing. But I think what we're looking at now is Kentucky's season is on the brink, and Will Levis is a competitor. And so I think Levis is like, you know what? I'm going to go out here with my guys, and I'm going to do the best I can. If I can't go, then we can't go. All right, looking at running yardage here, Cavassier Smoke is the leading rusher, but that's because Chris Rodriguez was suspended for 4 games. They had this whole thing, this NCAA investigation, and Rodriguez was one of the players that was mentioned as part of the allegation as receiving impermissible benefits. It'd be interesting to see how that all kind of plays out. But Smoke, a guy that we have not seen a ton of. Seems like he's always a little bit banged up when we play them, but leads them with 269 yards through 6 games, averaging 5.1 yards a carry, just to 1 touchdown, long of 27, averaging under 45 yards a game. Rodriguez been back for 2 games, came back against Ole Miss. Ironically, they've lost both games that Rodriguez has played. 198 yards net for him, 4.8 yards per carry, and then 1 touchdown, a long of 10, averaging 99 yards a game. So in many respects, that's kind of job one for Mississippi State. I think you got to make Kentucky one-dimensional. I think deep down they want to be one-dimensional, but maybe not the way that Mississippi State intends. I think they want to just come out and be able to run the football and do some play action. I think what you got to do here if you're State is stop the run and make Will Levis, who's less than 100%, beat you. This wide receiving core is young, will probably be pretty good the next year or two, but they've struggled at times to make plays down the field. Will Levis too. Everybody talked about him kind of being a dual threat guy. On the season, it's 40 carries. He's gained 69 yards, nice, and then lost 125. So a net of 56. So he's being more of the pocket passer. And I think that's kind of a byproduct too of the change in offensive philosophy with the new coordinator. And it's like, hey, let's showcase him for the NFL. I certainly don't think that all of a sudden this week he's going to decide to kind of revert to old form and just kind of tuck it and go. There's some Kentucky fans, too, if you read their boards, that have been a little bit, kind of frustrated that maybe they're not getting the most out of Will. And I think a lot of this, too, it's kind of a perfect storm. You got a guy that's banged up. You got a guy that's got NFL aspirations. You want to do what's best for him, and at the same time, what's best for your program. And if you put that guy out there and he gets hurt and all of a sudden he drops in the draft, what does that do for recruiting kind of going forward? It's just it's a delicate balance, to say the least. All right, Tavion Robinson is the leading receiver with 25 grabs. He is a transfer, if I remember correctly, from NC State. 392 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging 65 a game. Dane Key, a young guy that they're really high on, he got banged up in the ball game over the weekend too, and it's a wrist injury, if memory serves me correct. It's a sprained wrist, which is kind of a difficult thing when you're a wide receiver. Of course, they can wrap him up and give him some anti-inflammatories and send him out there and see how he goes. But football is a physical game. So it'll be interesting to see maybe how aggressive he is. That's the second leading receiver, again, kind of banged up. Barry and Brown, 288 yards, a couple touchdowns. Jordan Dingle, 9 catches for him for 107. So, but, you look at this, it's kind of been a by-committee approach. But by and large, it's been the same 4 or 5 guys that have been the targets of choice. They do use the running backs a little bit. Rodriguez with just 4 catches on the year and Cavassier Smoke with 3. So running some screens and sometimes checking it down to them, but not really a byproduct of an offense like our guys are. I mean, obviously they don't run the air raid concept, but they're not really utilizing the running backs in the passing game perhaps as much as they should. Wrote our Enemy of the State piece yesterday over at JamesPage.com. DeAndre Square, one of the first defensive players we've kind of highlighted with this. I run that piece every week is to kind of help you guys get more familiar with your opponent. But DeAndre Square is a guy that plays football the right way. I really like his game, and I wish he was gone, right? Which is the ultimate compliment you can give to a competitor, right? I'm just tired of playing against this guy. He had 12 tackles last year against Mississippi State, which is one off a career high. He did not record a tackle in 2020. And then in the 3 years that has followed, 30 combined tackles. This guy has had big games against State. Now, Jacquez Jones, not expected to play, former Ole Miss linebacker. That's a pretty significant development, too. He's the second leading tackler on the team, and they missed him last week. And Jones, very active, has had a good run at Kentucky. But big game last year against Mississippi State, but you neutralize that and you remove one of their top tacklers from a linebacking core that is good, maybe not great, but we are an offense that really stresses linebackers. We put them in conflict. And so when you have a team perhaps that doesn't have a ton of depth at linebacker and they lose one of their more productive guys, it puts a lot of stress on the rest of the unit. We should be able to exploit that. Jordan Levitz, a guy, too, that's had a good year for him, 24 tackles for him. Sacks. This is one of those things that's really interesting. When you think about Kentucky and you think about what they've been able to accomplish and you think about Mark Stoops and you think about that game in 2018 when poor Nick Fitzgerald was running for his life most of the game, Kentucky, through 6 games, 9 sacks. That's it. 9 sacks. They've allowed 25. 9 sacks. And it's not just rushing the passer. TFLs are down too. 27 TFLs on the year. And that's just not Mark Stoops' defense. Now, a lot of it's they've had some guys banged up. That's the reality of life. You get guys banged up, especially when maybe you're in a transition year. They were a good team last year. That was a good win for Mississippi State. It's like I read these people sometimes too. People forget we beat Kentucky and NC State both. They won 10 games last year. It's a good Kentucky team last year, but they lost a lot. And so now all of a sudden what you return is kind of banged up, and it shows in the production here. And just 5 interceptions on the year. They've only thrown 5, but they've only picked off 5 too. They had 6 against us in 2020. You knew the secondary was going to be challenged this year. They really haven't been. They've actually been a little bit better than advertised. But some of that, too, is a byproduct of the offenses that they faced. If I can find some numbers here, and sure enough, I have. I looked up some numbers yesterday, kind of for an article that I was working on, but also, too, kind of anticipation of the show. All right, so Miami, Ohio, that opening game, they ran 64 offensive plays, a perfect balance of 32 runs, 32 passes, and they allowed 179 passing yards. Let me go ahead and give you the punchline. Kentucky has not allowed a team to throw over 200 yards this year with one exception, and that was Ole Miss. That is a run-heavy team. And so it's interesting to me when you look at these numbers, teams have basically chosen to run the football against Kentucky, and that is something I don't know that we would have expected to see maybe 2 or 3 years ago. All right, the University of Florida, 65 offensive plays, 35 of them through the air, which is the most. That is the most passes that the Kentucky secondary has faced this year. Well, that's not correct. Second most. No, that is correct. I'm sorry. I can't read my handwriting here. All right, so 65 offensive plays, 35 of them passes. And it's 143 yards. That's the game, too. If you remember, after Anthony Richardson in Florida beat Utah, people were like, you know what? This guy's going to win the Heisman Trophy. And then after he melted down against Kentucky, nobody's even mentioning this guy anymore. And this is why. Bad game against Kentucky. And it wasn't necessarily a byproduct of Kentucky getting in his face. He's missing wide open receivers out there. All right, Youngstown State, they run just 46 offensive plays. 24 of them passes, 22 of them running. Then they get 134 yards passing. I mean, it's Youngstown State, right? All right, Northern Illinois, despite the fact that they did a great job in this ballgame, 59 offensive plays, 26 of them passing. 33 on the ground. Northern Illinois really gave Kentucky trouble. Ole Miss, 68 offensive plays, 29 of those passing. So 39 on the ground. South Carolina, 61 offensive plays, only 19 passes. So 42 runs. So what does that tell you? Maybe DJ and those guys can have a big ball game. The last 3 opponents for Kentucky all ran decidedly more than they threw the football. And I don't think that's because of the fact that hey, the secondary is difficult. I think it's, why throw it when we can just run the football? So could be a good night for DJ and those guys. But again, it's interesting. You look at the numbers here and say, well, Kentucky's 16th in the country in pass defense. Guys seems to be doing great. You get inside the numbers and you realize that people just aren't stressing that secondary. And that's a group that lost an awful lot from a year ago. So it's a new-look secondary. We'll see how things go. But I think what you're going to see here is I think you're going to see State be able to kind of get after these guys a little bit when it comes to running the football and throwing the football. I think we're going to have a chance to kind of do what we've done the last couple of weeks. If they drop, 6 guys in the coverage, we'll just take that 5-6 yards, and eventually we'll run them out of that and be able to take some shots down the field. That's just kind of been the formula here as of late for the Bulldogs. One of the things I think is interesting, too, and I touched on this briefly, but I want to kind of frame it up and give you a little context here before we get to special teams. We talked earlier about sacks allowed, which is 25, and that's a big number. You'd say, but Steve, well, where does that relate? Well, Kentucky has allowed the 3rd most sacks in FBS. Out of 131 teams, Kentucky is 129th in sacks allowed. 25. They're allowing over 4 sacks a game, and they haven't faced a blitz-happy scheme. Probably the closest thing to that's been Ole Miss. This is not a good offensive line. Now, granted, without Rodriguez, of course, you still got smoke, but without Rodriguez, people didn't have to maybe respect the run quite as much. The only 2 teams in the country that have allowed more sacks than Kentucky, Colorado State and Joe Moorhead's Akron Zips. Joe and those guys have allowed 28. Colorado State has allowed 26 in 5 games, Kentucky 25 in 6. And so you begin to think about, okay, you've got a secondary that is kind of rebuilt, and you've got an offense that allows a lot of sacks, and it puts you behind the chains. You don't think Zach Arnett smells blood in the water? Not to mention Will Levis, a guy that you beat up last year. You forced him into some bad decisions. You beat him up. He got in the cold tub the next day. That guy's coming in with a dislocated finger on his non-throwing hand and turf toe on the plant foot. You begin to think to yourself, this could get ugly. Now, it's tough to go on the road and win a ball game, but this is a terrible matchup for Kentucky. Absolutely terrible. Again, a leaky secondary that's kind of been, the numbers maybe are not reflective of their coverage ability. You got a team that struggles to rush the passer, and you're missing one of your leading tacklers at linebacker. The Mississippi State offense should be able to go out there and score as they have. Now, granted, we've been at home the last 3 weeks, but we ought to be able to go out there and score some points. And you look at this with Zach Arnett, how well Zach plays with a lead. Of course, I've always heard, dating back to my high school days, you can really play defense when you have a lead because you can afford to take chances because one play is not going to beat you. You got there and make plays. That's why I think it's paramount for State to get out to a strong start here. State needs to find a way to allow Will Levis to feel the wrath of the Mississippi State defense. I really feel good about the ballgame. Let's get into special teams here real quick. Because we always know that's one thing that Tulu Griffin always forces us to do. Hey, Steve, let's see how many touchbacks you're getting, right? Because we always think, if you're like me, I think anytime Tulu fields a kickoff, we got a chance to see something special. And I think it's just a matter of time before he brings one back. It always seems like he's one block away, and sometimes things work out for you. All right, let's look at punts first. Colin Goodfellow is the punter, 20 punts on the year, averaging 41.5, just the one touchback. That's pretty good, right? 7 inside the 20, though, but 4 over 50. So this is a guy that from distance can flip the field on you. But that's a guy. Good job there. All right, Matt Ruffalo is a field goal kicker. 7 of 10. We think it only happens to us. It doesn't. Opponents against Kentucky, though, ironically, 8 for 8. All right, Chance Poore is the kickoff guy, and this guy puts it in the end zone with regularity. 33 kickoffs on the year, 22 of them for touchbacks, just 1 out of bounds. But there's 11 that don't make the touchback, right? So maybe every third kick, and hopefully Kentucky doesn't kick off 3 times, but if they do, perhaps there's a chance for us to get a return here. All right, punt returning, Isaiah Cummins has had 1 for 3. The main suspect here is Tavion Robinson, 10 for 5 for 54, which is 5.4 yards a return. Has a long of 50. And that kind of skews the numbers, doesn't it? Because it means his other 9 have netted 4 yards. Berry and Brown, 1 punt for 11, 1 punt return. Cavassier Smoke, 3 returns for 22 yards, averaging 7.3, a long of 12. Juton McClain, that's probably an upkick there, 1 for 8. And then Berry and Brown, 6 for 286, averaging, there's no way this is right. There's no way this is right. They say he's averaging 47.7 yards because they have his long of 186. I'm not going to go back and do the math, but let's just go ahead and assume that's wrong. There's never been a 186-yard touchdown in the history of football. So that's wrong, Kentucky. Get it together. But again, special teams are always important. I don't think this is going to be the nip-tuck game that maybe perhaps I thought it would be against Texas A&M. We thought, special teams could be the difference here. It nearly was because we didn't execute a kickoff real well, and Devin Achane gets a big kickoff return late in the second quarter. But the reality of it is when I began to look at this and you say, okay, where does Kentucky have an advantage? We look at the offensive line. Well, they've allowed 25 sacks. One of the worst in college football. So no, you don't have an advantage there. You look at this young wide receiving group with Tavion Robinson, who was very good. And you got to match up against DeCamerion Richardson, Emmanuel Forbes, who's one of the best corners in the country. Do you have an advantage there? The answer is no. You don't have an advantage there. You look at the running backs for Kentucky. Yeah, Chris Rodriguez is a great player. He really is. And Cavassier Smoke is really good too. Do you have an advantage against the Bulldog linebackers? I don't think you do. So I think when you look across the board here, there's not an advantage on offense for Kentucky at any point. You say, but Steve, they got Will Levis. And yes, they do, who I think is overvalued. But also, too, Will Levis is injured, has multiple injuries. And I respect the guy for getting out there and practicing, want to be with his guys, and we'll see what happens on game day. But there's no way you begin to think, even with his high accolades and his projections in the NFL draft, do you say that an injured Will Levis is an advantage against a Mississippi State defense that has been very aggressive this year? Look on the other side of the football. You've got the Kentucky pass rush, which has netted 9 sacks in 6 games against the Bulldog offensive line that hadn't allowed a sack in back-to-back games. I think you feel pretty good about that. And then the fact that, State's running the football. If the Kentucky linebacker room was healthy, I might be able to say, you know what, they may have an advantage here, or at least a push here with the Bulldog running backs. Because I think DeAndre Square is a pro player. And I'm surprised he didn't go pro last year. Then you begin to think about, okay, this Bulldog receiving core against this Kentucky secondary that is basically rebuilt and hasn't really been tested yet. They will be tested on Saturday. And so I can't find a matchup, position group versus position group, that favors Kentucky. I think in many respects, this game favors Mississippi State in every aspect. Kicking is, a push. We've missed some, they've missed some, right? But the reality of it is, the most difficult thing about this one is going on the SEC road. What are we going to be able to do in a road game? We didn't do a great job at LSU. We did a good job at Arizona. We don't always play the best on turf. We don't always play the best at night. But we're not playing the field. We're not playing the weather. We're playing the team. And I really believe, short of Mississippi State going out there and just kind of melting down, we're going to win this game. I think there's a good chance we win it handily. I just want to get the W, right? But I have a really sneaking suspicion this game's going to go an awful lot like the last two did, where maybe it's a tussle for a half and the State gets a little separation and then puts things away there in the second half. We're going with the Bulldogs to win and cover in the Commonwealth. All right, time for today's Top 10 list, brought to you as always by closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R. Your friend in the mortgage business. A lot of people out there have said, you know what, Steve? I just can't get it done. I've tried. I went through my local bank. I can't get financing. Well, if anybody can get it done, it's Blair Chandler. 21 years in the industry. Top 1% close ratio in the country back-to-back years. And nobody stays in one industry by accident. You got to do a good job. And that's Blair. If anybody can get your loan closed, it's Blair Chandler. Maybe you are a guy that's got an atypical property. Maybe you're a non-conforming borrower. Blair's seen it all and done it all. A lot of people out there want your business. Blair's willing to prove it. If you mention to him you heard about him on the Boneyard, he's going to pay for your appraisal. That's a nice incentive, right? One less thing to worry about. Give Blair a call or text today on his personal cell number, 601-500-2344. Again, that's 601-500-2344. I believe in doing business with Bulldogs whenever I can. Blair is certainly one of us. Season ticket holder, multiple sports, has a place in Starkville. Keep it in the family. Again, that's closewithblair.com. All right. Rock of Kentucky. How about that? Did you know there was Rock of Kentucky? There is. One of my favorite bands is from Kentucky. Now, before we get into this, I want to give a hat tip to Chris Stapleton. Chris, not on our list, not a rock guy, though he does do some incredible music. I'm a huge Chris Stapleton fan. I would love to see Chris live one day. Haven't done that. But I want to give a tip of the cap to Chris. Didn't make our list. Probably Kentucky's proudest musical son these days. And then Rick Steyer was also a guy that bounced around the metal scene for a while. He recorded a couple of albums with Warrant, including the Ultraphobic. Was on that first Kingdom Come record with Danny Stagg, who was a very underrated guitarist, and with Wild Horses. So Rick didn't make our list. We wanted to give a tip of the cap. Okay, top 10. Now, our first band actually is based out of Seattle, but the lead singer is from Louisville, Kentucky. She was raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and sadly was murdered. You may have seen the Dateline NBC story about Mia Zapata and the band The Gits. We're going to go with the song A as our top 10 list. Number 10 on today's list, The Gits, G-I-T-S. The song is A, but Mia Zapata, an incredible performer in the punk scene up there, and a very tragic story and tale. She's part of the 27 Club, even though she didn't always get the notoriety perhaps that some of her more accomplished peers did, but a very talented young lady. All right, number 9. This is a very interesting band, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about them until I began to put this list together because there's not a lot of rock bands from Kentucky. This is a very interesting one. So if you're into alternative rock, I know Coy Welburn listens to the show. Coy's a guy that loves all this stuff, and Coy may already know these guys. But it's a band called My Morning Jacket. Very, very interesting catalog for them. A lot of range in what they do, kind of a dynamic sound. It kind of changes from album to album. I'm going to go with One Big Holiday. I love that guitar part at the beginning. I think it's very infectious. But My Morning Jacket, number 9. Number 8, a bit of a one-hit wonder, but a band that was thought to be part of the second wave of nu metal. It didn't work out, but it's a band called Primer 55. And the song is Loose. A little profanity with this one, just to kind of give you a little bit of a parental advisory here in honor of Tipper Gore. A little profanity in the song. But watch these jokers jump when I get loose. The groove on this is incredible. All right, number 7, and this is a guy, too, that our buddy Coy would know. It's Richard Hell, and he has been in several punk bands, and the song Blank Generation is number 7. A lot of people believe that is one of the songs that really shaped punk music. And it's a guy from Louisville, Kentucky. How about that? Richard Hell, Blank Generation. Interesting song. If you like things a little on the punky side, I encourage you to listen to those guys. Number 6, a band that sounds a little bit like Disturbed, a little bit like Seven Dust, maybe without the big sound, but there's some elements in the guitar work that sound a little bit like Clint Lowry. And it's a band that maybe didn't get their due. They kind of rode the wave of the, kind of the post-grunge alternative rock scene. It's a band called Flaw. Going back to their debut album, it's a great song called Only the Strong. Interesting introduction on the song, too. The band is Flaw. Now, the final 4, I think most modern rock people would probably agree this is the right 4. We may disagree on the order. You know what? I'm almost messed up here in a major way. Our number 5 band is not a rock band. They're considered a southern rock/country band, but I couldn't put this list together without paying homage to the Kentucky Headhunters. Of course, they had the big hit Dumas Walker. That's really more of a country song. I decided to go with Walk Softly on This Heart of Mine. We're going that direction. But how can you do a list of Kentucky rock bands and at least pay some homage to the Kentucky Headhunters? There you go. Number 5 on the list, the Kentucky Headhunters. And they're kind of involved with our number 1 group. All right, number 4, you've heard this song at Duty Noble Field here recently. Oh, yeah, that's right. The band Cage the Elephant, originally from Kentucky, actually moved to England. Kind of found some sound there, and they had a great song called Ain't No Rest for the Wicked. That's right. That's been a walkout. All right, number 3, a band that, when they hit the scene, a lot of people thought they were kind of Alice in Chains light back in the mid-'90s. It's the band Days of the New. And there was some substance abuse issues that ultimately led to the demise of this band. They've been back out there and done some things in recent years, but the debut single, Touch, Peel, and Stand, is absolutely amazing. It's stripped down, it's tuned down, and it's in your face. But Days of the New, number 3. And again, they've got, 4 albums, I guess, out there, but nothing like that first one. Now, number 2, Rising from the Ashes of Days of the New, is the Bantantric. Now, if you don't know Tantric, let me encourage you. If you don't get anything else from today's list, if you are a rock person, you need to listen to Tantric. I don't know if we've done a top 10 list of them. If we haven't, we should. Tantric is a great band. The singing's a little different. It's a little deeper, a little raspier. Doesn't really have the high register. But Hugo does an amazing job. This entire band's from Kentucky. But Tantric is amazing. The guitar work, amazing. And we're going to go with Breakdown, because I know the breakdown's coming. All right, number 1 for me, one of my favorite bands of this generation. I began to, I had a song from this band on my MySpace profile. That's how far this goes back with me. I love these guys. I've seen them multiple times. I've met Ben. And some of the guys from Blackstone Cherry are the descendants of the Kentucky Headhunters. Kind of keeping the family business. If you don't know Blackstone Cherry, and we have done a top 10 list with Blackstone Cherry that got a lot of impressions. And a lot of you reached out to me and said, you know what, Steve, I didn't know much about these guys. I absolutely loved them. You absolutely will. Give Blackstone Cherry a try. My favorite album from them is Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. I think every song on that album is absolutely killer. It's great. And I think you can start with album 1 and just kind of keep going. You know, when you take these long road trips and you're trying to listen to podcasts or whatever, maybe you're tired of hearing maybe me and Robbie and Brian's voice for a while. You want to take a break, listen to music. Put on a Blackstone Cherry album and just enjoy the ride. You'll be glad you did. We're going to go with White Trash Millionaire. That's our number 1 song today. The number 1 rock song from Kentucky is White Trash Millionaire from Blackstone Cherry. Could have gone a lot of different directions here, but I'll tell you this too. I'm not a really big drug reference song guy, but Me and Mary Jane is the real deal. Absolutely the real deal. Blackstone Cherry, a great band. I could talk about them to the balance of the show, but I won't. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out, let us know. The best way to do it is reach out to Roy on Twitter at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC 67. Dogmatic67, which is the year of his birth. He's older than me. And Roy will put you on the list. And so I've enjoyed doing this. To be honest with you, each week when we get ready to play an opponent, this football season, I've kind of enjoyed kind of doing the rock of our opponents. And I think this is a very interesting list. And again, you've got some punk stuff on here. You've got some new metal stuff. You've got some southern rock stuff. You got some punk stuff. You got some modern rock stuff. I love the fact that it's such a diverse sound out of Kentucky. And who knew? Who knew that Kentucky would birth so many good rock bands? So there you go. Your top 10 list for today. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by your friends at Campus Bookmart. I love Campus Bookmart. You will too. If you haven't been to Campus Bookmart, let me encourage you to go and go see their smiling faces. The Bully Shop has been completely renovated. It's all upstairs now. It used to be downstairs. Bigger showroom, bigger selection, bigger savings for you. A great fan base. Getting a chance to buy some great merchandise from a great Starkvillian institution at Campus Bookmart. If you can't make it to town, let me encourage you to visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. Yeah, I know you guys are probably like me. It's like, do we feel like that our players are going to be unfairly maligned because of the offensive system in which they play? I mean, we see it all the time, right? I mean, you heard even last year, when people were talking about, the Connerly and that kind of stuff. And listen, Matt Corral should have won the award. Absolutely should have. No doubt about it. Like, well, Rodgers is a product of the system. Well, when we all ran the split back veer and the triple option, did we say that those running backs were a product of the system? Is that what we did? Because I don't remember that. I think it's a product of the times. And the game has changed. And as Mike Lee said on Monday, The NFL clearly doesn't think it's dink and dunk because they're running a bunch of air raid concepts. Now, I don't know if the NFL has ever been more exciting than it is today. It's great. I don't watch it as much because the Steelers aren't playing well. I'll just take my ball and go home. But Will Rogers currently leads the nation in passing yardage. We're not the only teams running the air raid, but 2,110 yards through 6 games. That'll get it done. That'll absolutely get it done. The number 2 guy on the list is Michael Penix Jr., of course, that transferred out to Washington. Very interesting. A guy from Indiana makes the move out there. But Washington throwing it around a good bit too. Now, Will Rogers also leads the nation in pass attempts. Excuse me. That's incorrect. 3rd in pass attempts. Connor Bazelak at Indiana is throwing it more. Kyle Van Treese at Georgia Southern is throwing it more. There's Will, right there with 282 passing attempts. You look at passing completions, though, it's a different story. Will Rogers, most passing completions, the only guy in the country with over 200. Austin Reed at Western Kentucky, who also runs the air raid, 178 completions. And then Van Treese from Georgia Southern, that throws it around a good bit, 172. Passing touchdowns. C.J. Stroud is the only quarterback in America that has more touchdown passes than Will Rogers. He has 24. Both have thrown 3 interceptions. I think that's a big thing to look at, too. It's like, it's X number of touchdowns against the picks. There are a lot of people, like Hendon Hooker hadn't thrown any. He's only got the 10 passing touchdowns. Production's not there from a passing standpoint, but Hendon Hooker may be a guy that worked his way into the Heisman Trophy race. Kyle Van Treese is the guy that throws it a ton, as you guys know, 2nd most attempts in the country at Georgia Southern. 11 picks, 13 touchdowns. Remember our friend Jaden DeLaura from Arizona? Yeah, 2nd in the nation, 7 interceptions thrown this year. So you start running through the list here, and you kind of begin to realize not only are we throwing it a lot, but we're throwing it with purpose. And people say, but Steve, we almost had these picks. You don't think other teams have almost interceptions? I mean, the Hugh Kellenberger doctrine was never ratified in the state of Mississippi. All right? But the reality of it is that's football. Not every ball is going to be on target. Sometimes you got to get a receiver to get in there and break things up so you don't have a pick. And sometimes you're going to throw picks. But Will's thrown 3, and 2 of them were off the hands of his receivers. So we can live with a little bit of grace there, right? I mean, there's 2 times he was unlucky. Shouldn't he be entitled to a little luck every once in a while, too? When you look at this Will Rogers numbers, I mean, it's remarkable to think kind of where things are with Will right now. And I remember with very fine recollection, how many people basically said we couldn't get it done with Will. We needed to go out and get in the transfer portal and go get this guy and get that guy. We've already tried that once with KJ Costello, and it didn't work out well for us. But I'm very proud of Will Rogers, but I'm also proud of Mike Leach for sticking with his guy. He said on Monday, I did kind of envision this for Will, which makes sense. He didn't just inherit Will. Yes, Will signed with Joe Moorhead, but Mike Leach offered him at Washington State. It wasn't like Mike Leach just showed up and had to kind of learn to like Will Rogers. He already liked Will Rogers. He knew that Will Rogers had the skill set required to run his scheme. And now you're seeing it happen. As we mentioned earlier in the week, too, about how scoring average has gone up, 17 points in 2 years? I think people forget, too. Will Rogers made his debut against Kentucky in a game that was basically already decided. KJ was hurt. But the reality of it is that we talk about how teams kind of take on the personality of their coach and certainly the guy in the huddle. You talk to Dylan Johnson, you talk to Jaden Wiley, you talk to Caleb Ducky, you talk to those guys, they'll tell you, Will Rogers is a dog. In that huddle, Will Rogers is trying to find a way to win. It's interesting, too, after we had beaten Texas A&M, I see Will after postgame. I'm getting ready to walk to the car. Will's out there signing autographs for his adoring fans. And I walked up and I said, "Hey, 2, good game." He said, "Thanks, but we should have scored again." That's how I want my quarterback thinking. Don't you? And okay, when somebody brings up Will, the Heisman talk to Will, he just kind of grins and laughs. And I don't think it's because he's proud. I think because he believes that's so far beyond the possibility that he's not even going to waste any emotional energy on it. Will Rogers is focused on Mississippi State football. Will Rogers is focused on the University of Kentucky. Will Rogers understands the last time we went up there, we got embarrassed. We didn't just get beat, we got embarrassed. And I don't think people really realize how big the meltdown was. And then we throw Will Rogers out there, and I remember I'm in the press box thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I throw him out here in this situation. We didn't have a choice. You don't think that kid remembers that? Remembers how, not just how poorly KJ played, but Will didn't play well either. Of course, the expectations for Will to play as a true freshman in his first appearance, the bar is not very high. So it's not a Will Rogers indictment or anything. But I'm confident, knowing what I know about Will Rogers, that he has replayed that game over in his mind many times, as he has last year's game. What we did well. We talk about so much of this, it's like, well, we don't always play well up there. We've actually played pretty well. I believe our record's, 9-13 at Kentucky, something like that. I think we're 9-13. We've got 9 wins on the road to Kentucky, and a lot of those came under Dan Mullen, so it's not like it was ages ago. But I say that because it's like we always just kind of pick and choose, the facts that fit our narrative. I say, well, Steve, historically we haven't done well here, which has no bearing on this year's team. But I've yet to see anybody bring up, well, we've kind of dominated Kentucky for the better part. Well, but we've lost our last 3 trips, which is true. It's true. But I think when you go back and look at those ball games again, and give Kentucky, Kentucky still had to hit a big field goal in 16 to break the losing streak against us. But the reality of it is that we have gone up there and not played well, and a lot of that is on us. 18, that defensive front they had at Kentucky was legit, and they ate us alive. They did. But I think it's important to understand that Will Rogers is just cut a little different. And I say that because I think it's important for you guys to understand, like you see the Make-A-Wish stuff, and everybody's, oh, he's just such a good kid. And he absolutely is. But Will Rogers is one of the most competitive people that I've been around. I still contend to you that I think probably the most competitive guy that I've been around is Dylan Favre. He didn't have the physical skill and the size that a lot of other people did. But, Dylan Favre is a guy that would slit your throat to win a game of Chinese checkers. I mean, he is one of the most competitive people I've ever been around in my entire life. But Will Rogers is close. Will is a guy, too, that doesn't – I think a lot of this, too, is because he's a coach's kid. It's like each week, okay, what can we do to get better? I don't think Will Rogers and the Bulldog offense are all sitting around saying, we got it. It's just not how they're built. Now, 2 years ago, it may be completely different. I think back in 2 years ago, we were just all so happy to have a chance to play football. It's like, let's just go. But I think Will Rogers understands this is kind of the Bulldog revenge tour. And we got a chance to go up there and exercise some demons when we go to Lexington, Kentucky. I want to take a quick look back at that ball game. And because I think it's important to kind of look in context. Because people sometimes, we just look at the final score. And at the end of the day, guys, the final score is all that matters. But let's look a little deeper into this. Because, again, this is Will Rogers' debut. And it didn't go well. It didn't. I remember thinking, I was afraid he was going to get hurt. Because the game in many ways had been decided. And I think that Kentucky was feasting. Kentucky was eating, as they say. But that Kentucky team wasn't great. They went 5-6 that year. Arguably, their biggest win was against us. And we didn't have a good year. We didn't. It was a 4-7 year. Let's take a quick look back at this, though. The 24-2 game. Maybe you don't want to. It was a night game. Again, similar circumstances. We were coming off a loss that year. Now, the first quarter was completely scoreless. I don't know if you remember this. But there was no score after one. Defense was playing outstanding. we were keeping them very much at bay. They weren't able to do much in that ball game. You know, you remember Terry Wilson? Remember him, right? He was supposed to be the next big thing. I told everybody the guy can't play quarterback in the SEC. Nobody listened to me. And guess what? He couldn't play quarterback in the SEC. So we go down and we get a stop, and then we go down and then we don't do good. We end up having a punt. They get the ball on the positive side of the field with 50, but we go back and forth, and nobody can really do anything. And this is the last time Colin Hill ever played for Mississippi State. Was in this ball game. People forget that sometimes too. But they just weren't getting anything done. I mean, Brandon Ruiz missed a field goal from 56 to close out the first quarter. Excuse me. It's a 10-play drive that got 24 yards. Pretty crazy. We attempted a long field goal there to kind of break things. We couldn't get it done. And then finally in the second quarter, they kind of get some things figured out here. But the big play on this is we're 3rd and 13. We've got them backed up at their own 35. We're going to have an opportunity to get decent field position here. They've done nothing. And then Terry Wilson breaks contain and runs 51 yards. He had 157 yards. There's 51 of them right there. And then they end up scoring a touchdown. And really the only sustained drive of the ball game for them. That was it. And then we do nothing, and we do nothing, and we do nothing, and we do nothing, and we do nothing. And then next thing you know, KJ Costello, we're driving down the field to tie the ball game. We throw a pick six. Josh Paschal runs it 76 yards down to, not a pick six, down to the 2-yard line. And then Rodriguez scores, makes it 14-0. That's the only score in the first half. We lose contain on a 3rd and 13, and we throw a bad pick. You can't do that when you're on the road. We get a safety in the third quarter, and you start thinking, okay, we got a shot here. We got a shot. It's 14-2. We're still 2 scores away, but if we can kind of get some things going. But again, third quarter, we couldn't get anything going. It's remarkable to me when I go back and look at these numbers. Third quarter, they get the drive first, and we get the ball first. This is kind of discombobulated at times here. But it's 14-0 here, and we get the safety. And you remember, if I remember correctly, and you may see it differently to me, it seemed like I remember Emmanuel Forbes flashing and forcing a fumble here that we recovered in the end zone that they reviewed and we didn't get. I think they just ruled it an incompletion. And maybe it was. I'm just kind of remembering that as we go. But again, we come out at third quarter and do nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then we get a shot here. We force a fumble. And, we got a chance here to kind of make something happen. And we do nothing. We don't do anything. It's just like you look at all this and you begin to think, it's just like we went for it on 4th and 1 from our 34, and we give them the ball and immediately get it back because of a fumble. We're just trying to make something happen. We absolutely could not sustain anything with KJ Costello. We just absolutely couldn't. Over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. I remember, too, KJ having a chance to run for a first down, didn't, slid up short of the thing. It's insanity to me. Remember the safety. I'd forgotten about this. It was they snap it over the punter's head. Basically, when you go back and look at this, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but you go back and look at this, and it's just basically a testament to our own ineptitude in this ball game. I mean, it's ridiculous. KJ Costello was 36 of 55, 232 yards with 4 interceptions, 2 sacks. And most of those picks were not even contested. They were thrown right at people. And then Will, God bless the young Will Rogers of 2020, 9 of 15 for 43 yards and 2 picks. Colin Hill in his final game in a Mississippi State uniform, 7 carries for 17 yards. Woody Marks, 2 for 12. Colin Hill did have 15 catches for 79 receiving yards, so he touched it more than anybody not named KJ Costello. But I think this was basically a historic meltdown with a quarterback who has some physical skill but had difficulty reading defenses. And I think as a result of that, I think there are a lot of people, their perception of that game is somewhat skewed. It's like we forget that Will didn't even start the game. Will Rogers didn't go up there and lose that ball game. He will have played better, absolutely. But this will be Will's first chance to be the starter in Lexington. And I think the lingering memories of that bitter loss will be a motivating factor for Will. I think that's important to understand. Again, knowing what we know about Will and how competitive he is, you better believe Will Rogers is going to bring his best effort. I don't think there's any question about that. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by our friends at Portico. I love Portico. You would too. If I was moving to Starkville now, that's where I would move. There's no question about that. To be that close to campus would be wonderful. And it's on the quiet side of campus, 1.1 miles away from the Mississippi State campus, tucked away off of 2012, excuse me. Goodness, I know where I live. You turn off 82 on a 12. The very first right is Pat Station Road. You go through the four-way stop. Boom, there you are on the right-hand side. Portico. You can start with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, go all the way up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home. Whether it be your ballgame weekend retreat, maybe your primary residence, your future retirement home, maybe it's an investment property for you, Portico has a place for you. Phase 1 completely sold out. Phase 2 under construction now. Some custom builds part of that too. And if you want, if there are things you need, they can accommodate you. Reach out to our friend Brooks Bryan. Let me give you his number right now. 601-416-8075. Again, 601-416-8075. And again, Brooks, part of a great group, bringing this wonderful residential development to Starkville. Brooks wore the M over S, and not just at a ball game, but in a ball game. This is a guy that's invested in Mississippi State, invested in Starkville. Be sure and hit Brooks up with your questions. You'll be glad you did. Again, that's 601-416-8075. All right, our last few minutes together, let's do a little housekeeping here. Maybe you've seen Mississippi State's going to wear the white, icy uniforms, they call them. But instead of having the banner on the helmets, they're going to have the script, right? It says State. I'm excited about it. A lot of people are. I'm not a big fan of the banner. I don't invest a lot of emotional energy in it. But here's the thing. I want what's best for Mississippi State. Like, I want everything to look good and be first class. And there have been many times over the years that we've kind of hidden behind the budget and said, well, we can't afford to do this. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes it is a matter of economics. But I like the fact that, when we had Jared Benko here, and I think Eric George is kind of cut from the same cloth, is, okay, let's figure it out. Let's find a way. And I think this is one of those things, too. It's like, I think we're being somewhat receptive to the fans and said, hey, let's kind of shake it up a little bit here. If you look at the response on social media, a lot of people like it. I like it. And I think it's important for us to put our best foot forward when it comes to branding. Now, we're not always all going to agree. There are a lot of people out there that love the M-State banner, that they think it's amazing. And when it first came out, I did too. And I think it's just gotten a little bit stale. It's like when I look at like LSU and that kind of stuff and the Alabama A, I just don't get that same feeling, right? I mean, there's some schools you look at their logo and it's like, we know who we're looking at. I think when you look at the M-State thing, I think it looks good maybe on a lapel pin. And at times I thought it looked pretty good on the 50-yard line. But I just don't have that same maybe reverence, I guess, for that. I mean, to me, I love the walking bully, and a lot of other people don't. It's what we grew up with. But I thought the walking bully was fabulous. A lot of people hated it. Said, hey, it looks like a cartoon character. So we're never going to please everybody. But I do appreciate the fact that we do have an administration and a marketing group. And, Rhett Hobart gets a lot of credit for that. But Rhett's a guy, too, that is quick to pass that along to other people. It's my whole team. We got a lot of people working on this, as Rhett will say, and which says a lot about him. The guy has some humility. And Rhett loves Mississippi State. Glad to have him back. But I think there are some things out there. I think we're getting there, right? And I think having Rhett back is big because, number one, Rhett knows who we are. Rhett understands the fact that so many of you have varying opinions about this. We're never going to make everybody happy, but I think Rhett is a guy that is receptive to new ideas. Rhett has told me, hey, as you travel and you see things out there that are pretty cool, let me know. We'll take a look, see if we can do them. I love that about Rhett. I love the fact that Rhett's like, hey, Steve's a guy that travels extensively in the SEC. And, of course, when we play a football game, Rhett's going to be there. I'm going to be there for all the baseball stuff. And he's like, you know what, hey, if you see a good idea out there, let me know. I don't know that's ever happened. I guess that's not true. Leah Bees, we did mention a couple of things to me like that, too, especially for baseball. And one of the things that I'd share with her, too, is like at Georgia, they do the highlights. Like on Saturday's game, they show the highlights and a quick video recap of Friday's game. That's something we should do. I think we've done it a little bit. But I guess maybe because I'm getting old and I'm from the 1900s, but I like the fact that we have some younger people within the administration that have some real passion for this. And I think Rhett's a big part of that. And he's not alone. I'm not in any way just trying to pin all this on him, and not that he would accept it. But I think things like this are exciting for Mississippi State. Again, I'm an old school guy when it comes to baseball. I really am. I don't like to change a whole lot. I like the M over S. I don't think it should be a logo that's used across all sports. I think it should be specific to Mississippi State baseball. And it's so funny. I've had this conversation many times. People would say, but Steve, why do we have to have a baseball-only logo? Well, why does Ole Miss have to have one? Why does Florida State have to have one? Why does LSU have to have one? It's like you can go all the way down the list. A lot of teams out there that are very committed to baseball have a baseball-only logo. Why should we be any different? Because if the shoe was on the other foot, some of our people were like, oh, I don't understand. Let's have one just for baseball. That's my belief. But I do like the fact that we do shake some things up. And I've liked the white road uniforms too. I'm not a big white helmet guy, but I like the look when we go completely white. When we white it out, I like it. I didn't think I would, but I do. I don't like the all maroon, the maroon on maroon. I don't like that. And again, nobody is conducting a poll of what Steve Robertson likes. Nobody's going to call up and say, hey, Steve, this is what we're thinking about wearing this week. What do you think? It's never going to happen. But I'm invested in this program too, just like many of you are. And so I think it's important to express your opinion. And there are a lot of people that don't have strong opinions about that. But I think this weekend when we take the field at Lexington, I think you're going to like what you see. We are state. We are Mississippi State. And you speak to people all throughout the South. They know who state is. There was a guy on our message board just yesterday. He said, you know what, I lived in the panhandle of Florida for a while in Tallahassee, and everybody down there knew us as state. Even in Florida, they know us as state because they call Florida State FSU. We're not MSU. That's Michigan State. And we use it sometimes. But the reality of it is we're state. I'm sure in other states they have a state too. But in the southeastern region of the United States, people in college athletic circles know us as state. My personal opinion is we should push it. I remember being a kid, getting a big sweatshirt, just a big maroon sweatshirt, just had state across it. There was never any question about who that was. I like the Miss State a little bit too. I love those logos and those jerseys from that time because there's those feelings of nostalgia for the Jackie Sherrill era that was so fun for us. But I think when you begin to think about the fact that we've had this vintage vault collection, and of course the Interlochen MSU is supposed to come back next year, but it's a good time to be in the market for Mississippi State merch, right? And so when I think about years of my life, I remember it's like there were so many things that things just weren't good enough. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we're Mississippi State. I'm glad to say now that the new Mississippi State doesn't have that same ideology. We don't just think, well, we're Mississippi State. I shared with you guys before, Rocky Felker, when he was here, and this is in the 80s. This isn't in the 40s. When he was here in the 80s as our head football coach, he cut up film in a mobile home that was donated to us by Florence High School over in Alabama. That's embarrassing. The fact that our head football coach is in a donated trailer, to cut up film to go compete in the Southeastern Conference, that's an indictment. This new generation, I think, in administration sees things much differently. We're more committed to athletics. I think it all starts with Dr. Mark Keenum. It goes down to John Cohen. And I love the people and in the Facebook groups, I do read those threads. I mean, like everybody else at night when I can't sleep, I'm scrolling. There's a lot of people that they have a lot of opinions. They don't have a lot of facts. And there were so many people after the LSU ball game that came out with all of this, venom, ready to fire John Cohen and Mike Leach. Oh, they got to go. Everybody's got to go. Everybody's got to go. It's funny. I don't see them anymore. And so where is that same level of energy? Because you were so convinced after the LSU loss, a game that we should have won. I think we all agree with that. We should have won the game. We didn't. And I think seeing Tennessee beat them the way they did down there makes us feel even worse about it. And the fact we look up and see Ole Miss is undefeated, ranked ahead of us. We think, you know what, we could be right there with them or ahead of them. Right? The only polls that counted the last one. But let's not be prisoners of the moment here, right? Let's kind of look and see what we have, where we're headed. And I think right now, if you look at all the statistical categories, we talked about it earlier. Will Rogers leads the nation in passing, leads the nation in completions, second in passing touchdowns. Mississippi State defensively, probably playing the best that it's played under Mike Leach at Mississippi State. It's been, with rare exception, have you ever had a, quote, bad game on defense with Zach Arnett as your play caller? And you recall, many of you, very skeptical when we hired Zach Arnett. Oh, he's never called plays before. Why would we go out and get this guy? Well, he's a Rocky Long disciple who is the defensive coordinator that Mike Leach respects the most. And then after year one, LSU and everybody else is trying to go get Zach. And they're like, oh, well, wait, don't go. And this is what Mike Leach had envisioned, to have this incredibly vicious defense that complements the offense. We'll get you off the field. We're going to be tough in the red zone. Occasionally, we're going to give up some big plays, and Mike Leach will tell you we need to clean that up. But we're beginning to see the realization of Mike Leach's vision for Mississippi State football. Does that mean that we're going to go win this weekend? I think so. But there's no guarantees in life. We still have a very difficult second-half schedule. But we've taken the next step. And we've still got some time to go, and I read we're still Mississippi State. We still got a chance to mess this thing up. Go root for somebody else. Go root for somebody else. Because I don't want you to procreate with another Mississippi State person and then breed that negativity deeper in the fan base. We're trying to breed that stuff out of it. Oh, we still got a chance to go in a tank. I don't know what to say, guys. I mean, I really don't. When I see that kind of stuff, I just shake my head and I'm thinking, look at how far we've come as a program, as an administration, as a university, and we still have these people that want to forecast failure all the time. It just blows my mind. And so, again, you look at the numbers, 21 points to 38 points in 2 years. Granted, we're not done because we still got to play Alabama and Georgia. And maybe it settles somewhere around 30. Who knows? But the reality of it is we're beginning to see, number one, John Cohen went out and really did the kind of thing we don't do. He goes out there and goes and gets Mike Leach, the most interesting man in college football. We don't do that. But we did it. And I think a lot of it, too, is because we're trying to change we're trying to change our thinking. We go out and we get Chris Lemonis, a sitting Power 5 head baseball coach, and granted, Indiana's not the job Mississippi State is, but Indiana had a pretty good run. We played him in Omaha. Lemonis was an assistant then, but the reality of it is we go out and get a sitting Power 5 coach. And then we go out and get Chris Jans, one of the hottest names in the NCAA tournament last year for the play that he put on the court. I mean, it's like, who is this guy? And we go get that guy. Then you'll get Sam Purcell, who's considered by many to be the top assistant coach, the top recruiting assistant in the country. And so we have done some things that are maybe different than the box we've normally put ourselves in. And I remember seeing those first pictures of Mike Leach with John Cohen, thinking to myself, this is really happening. We've hired Mike Leach. And people are like, oh, the game's passed him by. The air raid won't work in the SEC. And then all of a sudden I look up and we're 5-1 and ranked in the top 16. Should be undefeated. And we got a quarterback leading the nation in passing. But the air raid won't work? in the SEC? You kidding me? I remember when Urban Meyer came, people said, that spread option offense will never work in the SEC. The defensive ends and linebackers just simply too fast. 2 national championships later, right? So I think it's important to kind of understand that this is a good time to be a Bulldog. The spring wasn't. Okay, we ended football on a negative note, and we still could. I grant you that. We still could. But I think it's okay to hope. It's okay to believe. It's okay to enjoy the ride. I mean, it's like there are so many people, and there's not as many as there used to be. It's like we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're just waiting for something bad to happen so we can say, see, told you so. And I remember this guy, I won't call his name because I won't embarrass him. He had a connection to one of our players, and we had a tough ball game several years ago. He said, man, it's just dogs being dogs. And I think to myself, man, if you're a dog, it's making me ashamed to call myself one. That's not how I feel at all. I believe Mississippi State is capable of great things. I don't think we just have to be satisfied with the Liberty Bowl. I don't think anybody is. I want to go out there and compete. And listen, I don't voice a lot of criticisms of the national media to you guys the way that I do to some of my peers and friends and people like that, because we just kind of go with the usual suspects. But anybody that thought Mississippi State was going to be a bad team this year, it didn't do their homework. They sold Mike Leach short. They sold Will Rogers short. They sold this coaching staff short. And now all of a sudden, people are saying, you know what, Mississippi State's one of the top teams in the conference. Mississippi State could be the number 2 team in the West. Some of the bowl projections have us going to the Florida Citrus Bowl, which would be incredible. The games fall just right, we could be a New Year's 6 team. I'm not expecting that. But with Mike Leach, you just never know. But the reality of it is, it's okay to believe. I'm not saying we got to go out and start a Twitter campaign or a hashtag, but it's okay. Sports are supposed to be fun. We have absolutely destroyed 2 SEC West opponents in a row. And now we're going to play a very vulnerable Kentucky team at a place that's not been very hospitable to us our last 3 trips. And I think there is reason for confidence, and I think that confidence is very much justified. So let's live a little rather than sit around and say, you know what, I'm sure we're going to lose. It's just a miserable way to go through life. It's okay to expect great things at Mississippi State because I believe we're on the path to being able to deliver those things. It wasn't too long ago we won a national championship in college baseball. Maybe you've forgotten. But the reality of it is it's a good time to be a Bulldog. Let's enjoy these days when we are, number one, winning, but also, two, we're getting a lot of very positive publicity around the country. I think it's an important aspect of it, too. We talk about branding, right? Well, we need a national pub. You know, we're getting it. You can't turn on the SEC network with people like Chris Dorian and those guys speaking very adoringly about the Mississippi State program. Now, if you win this week, can you imagine the hype going into Tuscaloosa? Can you imagine this Mississippi State team headed to Alabama? And listen, Alabama's got a very physical game this week against Tennessee. So, you know, we'll see how things go. But you take care of business this week, you're the story of college football next week. Kind of heading into Alabama, because a lot of people are going to be saying, hey, is Alabama on upset alert? And we'll see how it goes. Let's go take care of Kentucky first. We'll be back on Friday, kind of break down the SEC weekend, kind of give you the, we've got media availability with coaches today. We'll kind of bring you up to speed on that too. And if you hadn't done so, go to genespage.com. All of our videos from practice, our post-practice interviews are free. You can go to the website whether you're a member or not, and you can scroll down and watch those videos for free. You don't have time to read an article. Maybe you just got 3 or 4 minutes to watch a video. You can watch it. You can hear the questions that are asked and the answers that are produced by your players and coaches. You can watch it for free. If you hadn't done so, I'll tell you something, it's not for free. You go to dogpilethebook.com, and you get the sports books. All 4 of them there available. Alpha Dog, Stark Villains, Flim Flam, Dogpile, of course. Get them signed, personalized, sent out to you relatively quickly. Blooms of Oleander, of course, available just about everywhere else. BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com, Amazon. You can get it. You can have it. It's just something that I did for the fun of it and worked out to be pretty successful. And so I appreciate your contributions and your support of all of that. And, of course, Stark Villain gear available at StarkVillains.com. I'm happy to say, too, there's a couple of my friends in the rock music industry that now have shirts from me, and they're saying they're going to wear them on stage for me, and hopefully we'll have a picture of them wearing that so we can market those shirts. So that'd be pretty cool, too. So Stark Villains shirts available at starkvillains.com. Listen, I love you all, guys, very much, whether you love me or not, and want what's best for you and your family. And so I hope you have a great rest of the week. And I spend so much time sometimes, too. People think, it's always about sports. And when I drive, I do a lot of thinking. And I begin to think about, kind of things that I'm dealing with in life and what maybe you guys are dealing with in life. And I just hope that everybody in the sound of my voice, no matter your rooting interest, I hope that everybody that you and you love is far from harm's way. Because, life is tough. It really is. And you never know from one day to the next when something may happen that may alter the course of your own life. So let's live in today and appreciate today. And don't ever, ever forget to tell the people you love how much you truly love them. Because you never know when you're going to lose them. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
At Kroger, no matter where you order free pickup, you get the same great deals as you'd get in-store. So you can save when you order during band practice, or at the dog park, or wherever. Start your cart with the Kroger app and save from wherever today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. $35 order minimum. Restrictions may apply. Subject to availability.
And now, shop what you love and save $2 on each participating item when you buy 3 or more with your card. Kroger, fresh for everyone.